Hello and welcome to the Business of Story, the show that FeedSpot named as the #1 business storytelling show in 2022. I'm awfully proud of that. I'm your host, Park Howell, and today we are going to explore the power of visual metaphors in all of your business, brand, sales, and marketing storytelling. But all of your most compelling and persuasive storytelling starts with, you guessed it, the ABT, the and, but, therefore, foundational narrative framework. But now you can take either the ABTs of selling or the ABTs of branding quick online courses at businessofstory.thinkific.com and start hooking into that primal cause and effect limbic brain of your prospects, where all of their real buying decisions are being made. Then, as you grow as a more confident, powerful communicator, start weaving visual metaphors into your stories to light up the theater of the mind in your audiences. Our guest today, Dan White, is a visual storytelling expert and is author of 2 best-selling books, the Smart Marketing book and the Soft Skills book.
It only took me about a year to do the 2 books in terms of putting them together, but it was based on 30 years of research, if you like.
Dan White is a marketing and insights innovator. His contribution to the industry includes identifying what makes global advertising effective, scrutinizing the potential for viral, search, and depth marketing, and championing innovative marketing measurement techniques. His frameworks and visualizations have influenced generations of marketers and are built into the world's leading brand measurement, media evaluation, and copy testing systems, including Kantar's Brand Z and Unilever's Preview and Brand Health Check systems. Dan's career includes a decade as a marketing analyst, another as a brand and communications consultant, and a third as a chief marketing officer. He splits his time between client consultancy, training, platform speaking, illustration, and writing. So please welcome to the Business of Story, Dan White. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Now, I'm guessing by the accent, you're not coming to us from Austin, Texas.
No, not exactly. I never know whether I've got this kind of generic British, slightly posh accent. I don't know. I've been told I have in Britain, people say this is a generic accent, as in, no particular region. It's southern, that's for sure. But beyond that, no one knows. But yeah, I am from England. I live in Bidford-on-Avon.
And where is Bidford-on-Avon?
Well, Bidford, okay, I'm sure you haven't heard of Bidford-on-Avon, but you might have heard of Stratford-on-Avon.
Avon, a fairly famous writer came from there?
Yeah, I think there's a famous writer. Yeah, our most famous writer by far, Shakespeare, obviously came from Stratford. And Avon, Avon means river. So there are like 30 or 40 river Avons in Britain, because it just means river. But yeah, it's one of the bigger rivers anyway, the Avon that we're on. Yeah.
Well, I've got to tell you, this is like show number 351 of the Business of Story. And I did something with you that I've never done with anybody else. And I got to tell you, it felt a little bit like maybe trying to pick you up at a bar. And the reason why is I'm very...
I don't think you would be able to pick me up at a bar. I'm just saying. I mean,
Good for that.
You're lovely, but it wouldn't work.
No, the reason why I use that analogy is I'm very fortunate because I get overrun with guests' requests. And I usually go out and just, go out and cherry pick, find the guests that I want for particular reasons for our listeners. And I came across you on LinkedIn, and you were doing something you are currently doing something interesting there where you're sharing brand case studies visually, using visual metaphor in your illustration techniques to really spell out what is happening within this particular brand case study. And I found it fascinating, charming, a terrific way to communicate big, complex ideas simply and very entertainingly. And so I reached out to you and I said, hey man, that's so cool. Would you come on Business of Story. And then, much to my surprise, I see that you were also on Douglas Burdett's Marketing Book podcast, which I was fortunate to be on about a year ago. Douglas is a great friend of mine. And so I see, our worlds are coming together. And I'm so glad you're with us today to talk about visual metaphors in storytelling and why that's important. So why is it important?
I am so passionate about visual metaphors. It's my world. I don't know why. I've always been a visual person, and I've always learnt more through visuals than reading. Yeah, I mean, well, actually, to be honest, visuals and talking to people. That's how I learn, and I think there are a lot of people out there who are like that. Like, yes, I do read books, but I don't read that many, and I struggle with them. A book that is back to back text, pure text from start to finish, I really struggle. I have to force myself to read these books. It's not me.
Does this go back to when you were a kid? I mean, is there a moment in time that you realized? Take us to that moment when you woke up and said, wow, you know what? These texts are boring the hell out of me.
It's always the case. Actually, you know what? You've made me realize the moment. I didn't know I knew this. Okay. I must have been, I don't know, 6, 7. I've no idea the exact age, but something like that. And there was a book which was, I wish I could find it now. I'll have to look it up now that we've spoken, which basically was about how the body works, the mind and the body, right? For kids, a kid's book. But instead of lots of words, it was all about visuals, images. And in fact, I have a mental image now of, it was like a zoom in of the brain. And it had kind of little, are they called homunculuses? I think they are, little humans, in the brain. And then there was, someone posted near the eyes, because it was near by the eyes. And they had a certain job, and there was a little cartoon or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another one higher up that was more senior, which was the kind of higher order brain function. And I can't remember all the details, but I remember thinking, oh, that's brilliant. I get it now. You know what? I've never realized that is such a formative moment, but it definitely is. Yeah. Anyway, that struck a chord, and I've been trying to replicate that thinking recently. Yeah.
You've got me thinking about a book that maybe and you're speaking of. Hold on one second. I'm going to take off my headphones, walk over to my bookcase, and come right back because I can't remember the guy's name, but cool. You got to check this out.
Excellent. All right. Okay, cool. Hey, look at this.
Ah, yes. Here it is. Fritz Kahn. It? Fritz Kahn. Okay. Have you checked this out? This guy was back.
That looks... Wow.
Yeah, yep. A German illustrator, and he used to do the coolest things with trying to and communicating big science ideas, doing exactly what you're talking about, using visual metaphor. And it's just, he does the whole same thing with the brain, like you were talking about. And as a visual metaphor artist, you might want to check out this book. Fritz Kahn.
That looks amazing. Okay. I need this book. I think I must have seen a kind of really kiddie version of that when I was really young. And that's the kind of, perfect
I came across it because I was kind of considering how could I demonstrate using this same sort of illustrative approach how the brain works on story and how it comes in through the eyes and the ears and it hits the screen back there. And then the meaning-making machine kicks in and how it works through the hippocampus and that kind of thing, and do something that really, maybe you can help me with that.
I can because, I have an illustration on my website that is very close, at least, to what you're saying. I mean, I don't know if you can take a look now, right?
Yeah.
It's in the...
And by the way, folks, if you're listening to this and want to jump on the website with us, it's smartmarketing.me. That's where you're going to find Dan White, smartmarketing.me, and his amazing illustrations that makes his points, his educational points for him. So where are we going in here, Dan?
So if you go to that website, it's in the illustration section. Basically, the illustration section is 90% of the website.
Now you've got a ton of stuff in here. So where would it be in the illustration section?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of, you can see the different sort of mainly marketing and business related topics, but there's also one which is kind of almost above all of that, which is mental processes near the bottom. Hopefully you can see that.
Oh, I got it right here. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So these are my way of thinking about and illustrating how the brain works. So the one that you made me think of is called the operations of working memory.
The operations of working memory.
Hopefully,
There it is. Let
yeah.
me click on that. Is it going to
Yeah.
come up for me here? Okay,
So the
good.
operations of working memory. Can you see that one? I mean, it's basically, this is a summary of, I'll tell you what, this is a bit of a name drop, right? I studied under Alan Baddeley at Cambridge, right? He was one of the most influential professors in the area of understanding how memory works. In fact, his model for working memory is kind of summarized in this graphic that you see, that I've got on the website, the operation of working memory. And I kind of thought, well, I've got to bring this to life. I needed to come up with a scenario. Yeah. So a scenario, and I don't know why I chose it. I've no idea really, was that, this was someone hunting. Yeah. They're
Hmm.
hunting,
Yeah, you're
you
telling
know,
a story with this. In the upper left-hand
I'm
corner, you've
telling a
got
story.
someone that's coming into the
Yeah,
forest. There's a moose there or an elk, and you've got a
that's right.
gun. And then what happens?
You got to, yeah. Well, someone says, hey, it's near the trees, right? And then bang, right? As in, obviously, the sound of the gun going off trying to shoot the elk. And then, missed. Okay, that's the story. That's the whole story. By the way, it had to miss because I don't like hunting, so I had to say miss. But anyway, that's fine. Okay, it doesn't matter. The, the,
So
the
you've got
point
a
is that
non-hunting
was a.
bias in here. Okay, fair enough.
I've got a non-hunting bias, but that's fine. It's only an
Yep.
illustration, so I can do. I can indulge myself, can't I? Um, and the way that it works is like, okay, well, there's all sorts of stuff going on here. You've got all the senses, right? You've got the senses. You've got what you see. You can see some trees. You can see the elk in the distance. You can hear things, right? You can hear your person next to you say, "Hey, it's near the trees," and then you can hear the sound of the gunshot. And then your person say, "Oh, you missed," right? These are phonological phenomenon, yeah. And then you've got a kind of almost what it's called the episodic buffer. It's like a recording of no, it's not recording. It's figuring out what happened in what order and recording that. So these are all things that happen in working memory. Now, the fascinating thing for me is that this can all happen, but it's up to the brain's central executive as to whether this is actually worth recording. Is this interesting? Is this useful potentially in the future? Should I put it into memory so that in case it's useful in the future? And if it is relevant enough, then fine. Two things happen. It goes into consciousness, as in you go, oh, right, okay, I'm aware of this story, and it goes into long-term memory as almost like a little reel. And I've tried to draw a little, old-fashioned kind of Hollywood, reel of film that captures all those key concepts. Anyway, it's just a way of thinking
Yeah.
about what's going on, you know,
And as marketers,
in the
we
brain.
care because, of course, we want to be memorable. We want to be lodged in that executive functioning brain. And gosh, have we
Exactly.
learned anything from COVID and COVID brain, that our limbic system has taken over and eating up all of our calories and energy trying to figure out what in the hell's going on with COVID and all the misinformation and misunderstandings happening, that it is taking energy away from that executive functioning brain and is probably harder
Mm.
for us to be able to have the impact that we want in our marketing messages, simply because we are not getting the attention that we want and or deserve if what? We're not telling a powerful, evocative story enough that is
Story.
important enough to our customers.
Yeah, because it's competitive. I mean, the brain can only store so much, and the central executive effectively decides whether or not this is important enough. So,
Yeah.
if you're a marketer, you need to make what you're doing, the communications that you're portraying, feel really important and relevant. So the brain goes, okay, I'm going to remember that, and that's the secret of effective marketing.
How do you do that?
Well, there's there's a number of ways you can do that. I mean, I think that when you think about how the brain works and what does it attend to, that's the first thing. to talk about. What does it decide to pay attention to? And I think there are certain principles. And again, I've got a framework probably in this same section. I'll have to look in a minute. It's kind of like, well, the brain is wired to notice things that are different, that stand out. I think it goes back to,
the Serengeti.
A long time ago.
Survival, when we were trying to say, okay, everything looks really cool here. What the hell are those pair of eyes with the fangs below it?
Yeah, exactly that. There's, I think the way I tend to think about it is like the brain is on the lookout for either risks or opportunities. Yeah, new stuff that might be a new risk or a new opportunity. And yeah, the eyes staring at you through the grass, if you spot them, you go, oh my God, right, I need to attend to this. I need to get alert. I need to think about it.
I need to run is what I need to do.
I need to flee. Yeah, exactly. Or it could be more attractive proposition. It could be a potential mate. Nothing wrong with that. In which case, again, I need to pay attention. I mean, I need to move in and be at my charming best, for example. So,
Dan, have you ever read Derek? Have you ever read, speaking of this, looking for the unordinary, I guess is what looking for the disruption in the scene. Derek Thompson, who's a writer for The Atlantic, came out with a terrific book a couple years ago, and it was one of the leading marketing books called Hitmakers. And the subhead was something like "How to Stand Out in the Attention Economy." And he talked about that all through it. The main theme was, how do you start with something ordinary so that you can at least get people into the theater and understanding what you're talking about, and then lead them to something extraordinary, something different, tweak it just a little bit. Surprising.
Enough to get them interested, to get them to remember it. Absolutely. That's the key. That's the secret, isn't it, of effective marketing? I've just been watching I've been trying to watch a lot of advertising recently on TV in particular, right? And I've noticed, oh my God, there are so many ads with people just dancing. People just dancing because they're so enthusiastic. I think I've seen this version of this ad or a similar ad like 1,000 times, and it's wallpaper. You don't even notice it. You've got to stand out. You've got to be a bit different. And I think that's the power of originality and creativity. And that's what some of the very best creative agencies do. They bring that originality and creativity that grabs attention way, way above, competitors.
Dan, recently we had, of course, our Super Bowl for the NFL in early February. And that is the showcase of advertising, of course, throughout that entire game. And so what I typically do when I'm watching an NFL game or even a college football game, because they are so drawn out with all the TV timeouts and commercials, I record them and then I jump in an hour and a half later and I can blow through the game. Yeah. And so instead of spending 3.5 hours, I can do it in an hour. Well, at the Super Bowl, I did the same thing, got home, but we took time to go through every one of those commercials and really watch them and even rewound them. And I found that, number one, most of them were 60-second commercials. And it seemed like the writers and producers lost track of the story about halfway through each one of those spots. And I don't know if that's because of the attention economy and they didn't know how to keep the interest going throughout. So many of them just use stars and influencers and that kind of thing. To your point about the dancing, is it just was like it's wallpaper. It became meaningless after all that. The only one, the single commercial that stood out because it was so outside the box, was for Bitcoin. And you know what Bitcoin did?
Yeah.
They had a QR code. They had like this magenta background, and a QR code comes in and floats around like a screensaver. And you are there trying to shoot it with your phone to see, where does this take me? It doesn't say Bitcoin until the very end. And it must have been about, I swear to God, it was like 3 seconds. There was like this, boop, 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 Bitcoin, web address, boom, and you were done. So entertainingly, it was not pleasant. But man, did it stop you. And here all of a sudden you had a screensaver for the Super Bowl. And I thought there is someone actually really thinking outside of the box
That's
and
genius.
engaging an
Originality.
audience.
Completely
Yeah,
different, thinking in a different way, and and also cleverly, of course, you're getting people to interact. You're getting engagement by encouraging people to try and get it on their phone. To get the QR code to register on their phone. Right? Clever.
absolutely. So
Really clever. That's the kind of
let's go
thing.
back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's go back to this idea of
Mm,
the visual metaphor and why that is
mm.
so important to you and the work that you do. And let's first define, what do you mean by visual metaphor?
If you use a particular visual, you could choose to illustrate something in a particular way. You're automatically triggering some sort of association, right? E- Every visual has some kind of connotation. So, for example, I did a case study recently for Patagonia, the brand for sports equipment and sports clothing. Yeah,
Famous
and I
American
thought
outdoor company.
exactly, it's a fantastic company and a fascinating company. I'm obsessed with it, and I thought, okay, I want to show that this is, in as succinct a way as possible, that this is a company that's about outdoors, outdoor pursuits, outdoor sports, etc. Right? I want to show that it's growing. I want to show the different points in time where it introduced something new and built this a fantastic brand. Key moments, the story of the brand, over historical story of the brand. And I kind of thought, oh, and luckily, if you look at the Patagonia logo, it's a mountain range. In fact, it's a particular mountain range that I think you'd have to check, but I think the founder of the company, scaled this particular mountain range. He was a well-known and brilliant climber. You know, I
Yeah,
thought,
out of
oh,
Patagonia,
of
down
course,
in South
yeah,
America is where the name came from.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that was one of his, and I think they even called it the. Oh no, I'm going to get this wrong. The trouble is, I half remember all these details, but I sometimes get them wrong. But I think there is a route up the peak of that mountain range that's called the Californian route or something after this guy. Anyway, look, I could be wrong, so please don't don't take that as gospel. But I thought, okay, and then I just looked at the Patagonia logo and I thought, it's there, it's perfect. It is the mountain range. All I've done is I twisted the angle so that it kind of it inclines more than it does, to give the idea of growth. And it looks half like a mountain range, of course, but also half like the classic, what do you call it?
Yeah, growth
Sales
chart.
graph over time,
Hmm.
growth chart.
Hmm.
Exactly. So again, it's that's the example of what I mean. It's like something that automatically conjures up the meaning that you want and the connotations that you want, and that just goes in the brain straight away. The brain doesn't have to think. The mind doesn't have to think about that. It just brings those connotations, and therefore you've got more time to add the layer of more intellectual detail that you want. So yeah, that's an example of what I mean.
I'm a huge Patagonia fan too, with how they treat their customers, their employees, the planet, and everything else. And
Yeah,
I was lucky, almost 7 years ago now, I had Vincent Stanley, the director of philosophy of Patagonia, who has been there
yeah.
since the very beginning, was one of my very first guests here
Oh,
on the
brilliant.
Business of Story. So you can go to show number 3 and hear from Patagonia themselves. And
Oh,
at the
number
time, I
three.
was
Wow. Right at the beginning.
show
Okay, that
number
sounds
3
brilliant. Yep.
a long
No,
time
that's great
ago. And he
because
was,
with these stories, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
with
no, that's
these
cool.
with these case, I was going to say, with these case studies, actually hearing from the people, the founders, and or the people who were there right at the start, you get the truth. Because often that's hard to get. I just did an Apple case study recently, and the best sources of research were videos back from the kind of 90s, 2000s, with Steve Jobs and Apple employees talking about their company and how they built it to what it is today. And I think those are the best sources.
Dan, on your case studies on your website, the one that I was kind of intrigued about looking at was the one with Tropicana and where they have
Oh yeah,
their old standard package for their orange juice, and then they changed it.
Yeah.
And what happened in that change? Can you kind of take us through that case study? Because I think it's
Yeah,
a
sure.
good example of visual, metaphorical storytelling to where they were. And then they changed it to an artsy design and sales plummeted. And they lost the story in that. Now it just looks like another, packaged goods on the in the juice aisle.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's quite a famous example because obviously, PepsiCo are a fantastic company, and they make good decisions all the time. And they've been such a success. But this was clearly not a success. This was an issue, a problem. Yeah, I think. I mean, when you think about it, when people are especially packaged goods, people buy repeatedly. And a lot of people will be buying Tropicana regularly, and they know exactly what it looks like. And it has or had and still has gone back to having a very distinctive pack with a clear logo, obviously the dominance of the orange color, with a huge orange in the middle of it. And actually, also, not everyone notices this, but a lot of people do. There's a straw going straight into the orange. Now that is a genius metaphor, visual metaphor. It's like you're sucking out the pure juice in the middle, fresh from the fruit itself. Now, not that everyone sees that, but that's part of the story, I think. Now, when they made the change, the new packaging was more modern, I would say. You could see why a design team would go, this is much fresher, more modern. But they lost. It was very difficult for people who are familiar with the previous packaging, the established packaging that's was around for ages, to even see the connection. The brand name itself was less clear. It was written vertically, not horizontally, which is harder to read. And the focus was actually just on a big glass of orange rather than the fruit itself. And literally, the people who usually would pick up their Tropicana and put it in their trolley just couldn't they couldn't recognize where on the shelf their normal one was. So they went, oh, okay, maybe they've stopped doing Tropicana. I'll just have the own label. So yeah, hence the massive drop in sales, and obviously a quick reaction, of course. They figured out what was going on and they went back to their original packaging. But yeah, you're right. I think that, visuals are so important for all sorts of things, not just communication, but also recognition.
Yeah. And this is a good example of kind of a definition, I guess, of a metaphor where you are taking two ordinary items, in this case, an orange and a straw, and then combining them by plunging that straw into the orange to make a third, more meaningful thing. And in this case, it's like you're drinking pure, fresh orange juice with Tropicana.
Yeah, and you're communicating that with no words at all. All you're doing is communicating it through having a picture of an orange with a straw stuck in the middle. I mean, genius. Actually, can I give you a story? I'm very proud of this. So can I share this with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. This was this was a long time ago. This was in the early 90s. Okay. And I was lucky enough to go on a course. I was a market research executive at the time. I was lucky enough to go on a course about advertising specifically, where you'd learn more about advertising so you could be a better researcher of advertising. And it was run by, I think, I can't remember the organization, but it was a UK advertising, organization. And the task they gave us is, you've got the next 10 minutes to come up with a great idea to advertise Pro Plus. Pro Plus was, I don't know if it still exists actually, but it was a tablet you could buy. It was caffeine. It was a caffeine tablet, and it was mainly bought by students, for example, or people who needed to stay up all night to revise, or just wanted to, keep awake for longer. That's what it was. And they were trying to get the idea across of, what's a visual way of presenting that. And I'm proud of this to this day. um, I, God, this sounds so smug, but I'm going to tell you anyway. What I did is I drew Pro Plus, like a logo, right? But the U was much bigger than the rest of the word. And the U looked like a candle. I drew it to look like a candle. But the candle had a wick both on the left and the right of the U with a little flame coming up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep.
And hopefully you know where I'm going with this. It's the concept of burning the candle at both ends, as part
Oh, I
of
get you.
the logo itself. Yeah, you get my drift. Now, I'm not saying this is a great idea because maybe it's too subtle, but it was one of those moments that made me realize that, a clever visual can help communicate something implicitly really quickly. So yeah.
And this is a
similar to
supplement. Pro Plus is a supplement that helps
Yeah.
you stay awake, like caffeine induced,
That's right.
whatever. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what it is. Yeah.
I've always wanted to invent a sleep aid that could knock me out for literally 12 hours, have no side effects. I could wake up just fresh as fresh can be, no grogginess whatsoever. It's like I'm in my own little time capsule. And you know what I'd call it, Dan? I would call it Comadose.
Comadose. I'm with you. Got it.
Yeah. Knock me out. Put me in a coma for 12 hours. Make me comatose. But this is Park's new business of story. Knock yourself out. Comatose.
Yeah, you're going. But that's not my world. That's a verbal trick, not a visual trick. So
now, how would you make it now visually? What's the first visual metaphor that pops in your mind for comatose?
Oh, now you're challenging me. Come on. It's nearly
thing we're
7
not
o'clock
on
in the
visual.
evening. I've had a whole day at work. How am I going to come up with a great idea on the spot?
How many pints do you have in yourself, Dan? Come on.
Oh, God. Comadose. No, I can't do it. I can't. Dose. Look, the thing is, my illustrations take me at least a day after I've done the research, at least a day.
All right. So let's put it out to our listeners. Let's put it out to our listeners. Who can sketch out a comatose visual metaphor for my new product? Email it over to me, park@businessofstory.com, and there will be something free in it for you. I promise. Just let's see what happens. It'll be fun. And then we can share some of these, and I'll certainly send them to you, Dan.
Can I enter? After this, when I've had some time to think, can I enter as well? That'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see what you come up with comatose.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, cool.
Anyways, one thing that's been kind of gnawing at me, we've been talking about your background, your fascination with memory and the brain, your work with illustrations, with visual metaphor, the marketing work you do. Here you are out in the middle of almost nowhere in the United Kingdom. What do you do for a living? Are you a brand strategist, marketing strategist? You've got 2 best-selling books, which is really cool. And I want to talk about your most recent one here in just a second. But for me, can you bring me full circle here? And what is it you do? How do you make a living?
I have no idea. I don't know. Okay. I worked for 28 years in corporate life. Yeah. Okay. So
Doing
literally
what?
straight from university. Yeah. Straight from university, 20 years solid, no gap year, anything like that. And it was great. I learned so much, and it was
What did you do in the corporate world?
Well, my main role initially was market research. So that's, analytical side of marketing, as in, researching and advising clients on how to make better brands and better advertising. That's my core. And that was a big chunk of my career. I then moved in within the same organization, actually, which was originally called Millwall Brown, and then it got bought by, it originally was bought by WPP, and then WPP then founded Kantar, and it's, a lot of your audience will have heard of Kantar. So that's what I did. And then I evolved into a marketer. So I ended up being a CMO within the Kantar organization. And then after that, I spent a couple of years I was called head of expertise, which was my best job title ever. Head of expertise within Kantar in the UK. which effectively meant, how can I help the next generation of market researchers understand how to be brilliant at their job? So I learned a lot about learning theory, how to train, how to get people to remember important concepts. So I've done quite a lot. So, it's market research, marketing, training, recruitment. Those are the kind of areas. So it's a whole mix of those things. And that's over 28 years. So then I finally left the corporate world. And then since then, I've been self-indulging quite a lot. you know, as in I've been thinking, okay, I'm going to write a couple of books. So I wrote a couple of books. When I say write, 50% of them are illustrations. So it's kind of wrote stroke drew a couple of books.
And the
And I've
first
been
book you wrote was
lucky
the
enough.
Smart Marketing book?
Yeah. The smart marketing book, yeah. So I always had two books in mind. The first one was the smart marketing book, which was everything I'd learned about marketing represented in the simplest, clearest possible way with loads of illustrations and frameworks to bring it alive. That was content. But I always had the second book in mind, which is the soft skills that you need in any career, but including marketing, but other careers as well, to make you successful. Because technical skills will get you so far, but you need the soft skills as well to be really successful. So I wrote everything I'd learned about the soft skills as well, and again represented through frameworks and illustration. So they're the kind of the yin and yang. They go together in terms of helping people develop an effective career.
I love that. I just had Paula White on the show number 348, talking about soft skills and how she uses music. She came out with a new book called Your B-Side. So your A-side is basically your hard skills. Here's how you showed up. Here's how you got the gig and all your proficiencies in the hard skill area. But you find yourself like stymied. You're not growing. You're not connecting with your people because you haven't connected with your soft skills and what really makes you tick. That is her B-side training. And much like you with music or with illustration and visual metaphors, she does it with musical metaphors, which is near and dear to my heart. But in both cases, what you're doing is using the arts to really tie in and connect with those soft skills. And we're talking soft skills, communication skills, relationship skills, adaptability skills, those kind of things that are so critical in today's age, more so than ever, I think.
Yeah. I think more so than ever, and possibly even more than the hard skills. I mean, that my only build on that is like, by the way, I imagine a lot of your audience wouldn't have a clue what a B-side means, by the way.
A B-side record? Yes. Well, that's why I start that show with a record. Bill Haley and the Comets' famous hit was on the B-side of that 35 record. And so I did have to set the stage for them.
Yeah, I guess say you have to start with what is a record, and then what is an A-side versus a B-side. And then the thing is, in my memory, B-sides were usually a lot worse than A-sides. In fact, going way back, they were often just instrumentals that the band had just knocked off very quickly because they needed a B-side. Anyway, whereas I think actually soft skills it's a double A-side. Yeah, they used to call them that, didn't they? Double A-side. Yeah.
Was that? I don't remember that. I just remember side A and side B. Side A is supposed to be the single, and side B was filler. But in this case, Bill Haley's in the Comets, Rock Around the Clock was the B side. The A side of that album that the studio wanted to push out was a horrible song that went nowhere, but it was the only way Bill Haley was going to get any airplay. So he had to record the A side for the studio, which he hated, and then he got the B side, Rock Around the Clock, and the rest is history.
Is that right? Oh, that's fascinating. I'm thinking the double A side was something in Britain. Like the most famous one I can think of is, Last Christmas. I hope that's a global hit. I don't know, by George Michael and Wham. I'm not going to sing it. Well, I want to sing it. Last Christmas, oh come on, last Christmas I gave you my heart, but the very next day you gave it away. Now, please say you've heard that song.
Yes, I've got that. I've probably heard it 10 times over the holidays, maybe 100.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Good. Okay, now that was actually a double A side. In fact, I don't think it got to number one, because I think it was "Do They Know It's Christmas?" The Band-Aid song was number
Hmm.
one, so it's the best number two ever or something. Anyway, I could be wrong, but it was a double A side with "Everything She Wants" by George Michael, which was a fantastic song. And it launched his solo career. Look, we're not doing a musical show here, but the double A side makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, you're doing good. What's in your book, your new book, Soft Skills?
My new book. Okay. So it's kind of like meant to be a guide that covers all of the kind of non-technical skills you need to acquire over the course of your career to be successful in business.
Such
That's
as?
kind of what it is. Okay, so it starts off very much with kind of yourself, and here we're talking about your resilience, your physical health, your mental health. This is not my specialism, but I thought you can't write a book about soft skills without talking about the importance of looking after yourself, your mental health, your physical health, and basic things like how you manage your time. And how and like things like fostering a growth mindset, which is fundamental, to developing ongoing over 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, whatever. So that's kind of the intro. And then it's more about how you interact with other people, you know? How do you connect with people who are very different from yourself, different personalities? How do you develop your listening skills? Because without listening skills, you'll never get anywhere in business or life, to be honest. You'll probably not get a good partner for that matter. And then it moves on. It's like a natural progression. Like, at some point in your career, you may be given responsibility for managing people. And how do you do that? What are some good tips and tricks and frameworks for doing that? And then maybe managing teams and bigger teams and projects, complex projects. So it gives, tips and tricks and frameworks for that. And then it's more about, I guess, developing your own personal communication skills, networking skills, storytelling skills, how to present in a commanding and powerful way. Even at the end of the book, we talk about even, you might get to a point where you need to run workshops. So beyond just presentations, but running workshops with, tens of people, 20, even hundreds of people. And finally, how to pitch. So how to put stuff across in such a compelling way in a short space of time that you build business with other people. So it's kind of like a 101 for how to be effective beyond your technical skills.
And you don't have a ton of copy in here. It's done with explanatory copy writing, but a lot of,
Right.
all of your illustrations. How long did it take you to illustrate this book?
Well, it depends how you think about it. It's not that much of an exaggeration to say it took me 30 years. And that sounds crazy, but it's kind of true because over the course of my career, I would scribble things, take notes, anything I thought was useful or a framework I thought was fantastic, or even my own framework to capture the idea that I've been taught or I picked up from someone. And so I had like a pile of, I don't know how many it was, I didn't count them, but it must have been 40 or 50 notepads. And when I left corporate life, I went through them all and I thought, oh, that's a good one. And then I drew them up properly, as prettily as I could, as clearly as I could, and then wrote the narrative around them to explain how to use them and what they mean, and put them in the book. So it only took me about a year to do the two books in terms of putting them together, but it was based on 30 years of research, if you like.
Where can people find this book?
Well, Amazon is the best place to look because Amazon's everywhere, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, the first one's called
Stupid question, right?
Yeah. Okay, here's the big plug. Yeah, the Smart Marketing book was my first book, and the accompanying book is the Soft Skills book, and both are available on Amazon globally.
Well, Dan White, thank you so much for being here. I know it's now moving on 8 p.m. your time out in Bidford. What's the last part of that name? Bidford Avion?
It's on Avon, as in on the River Avon.
Yeah, Bidford on Avon. Because I blew it early in the show. I want to make sure that I cleaned it up at the end here. But no, thank you so much for being here.
Okay, no problem. I mean, yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed it.
Well, Dan, come back anytime. I'm going to get your book. Check it out. I'm going to send it to my our son, Caden, who produces this show.
Hey, that's me.
And I think he's going to get a big kick out of it because I want him to read it before he actually hears you talk about it. He is a very good illustrator himself and communicates terrifically in illustration. And I think he's, as a young professional, he can get a lot from the book. And I'm going to shoot that over to him right after this. He's going to edit your show in about a week, and you'll be on the Business of Story here not too long. So thank you for all that.
Excellent. You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, and thank you all for listening to this edition. If you liked what you heard, share the show with anybody you know that will get a kick out of visual metaphors, Dan's approach to illustration and storytelling, and definitely check out his 2 books, the Smart Marketing book and the Soft Skills book. I can't wait to dive into them. If I can be of service to you, come on over to the Business of Story, where I've got all kinds of tools, tips, techniques ready for you to become a compelling storyteller. And of course, I've got my new ABTs of Branding short course out. In under 30 minutes, you will go through 3 short videos with me, and I'm going to show you the and, but, therefore narrative framework and how you can use it to shore up and define your overall brand story so that you will stand out in the world, that you will differentiate who you are, and you'll get crystal clear on who your ideal customer is, so you're not wasting a bunch of time floating around trying to find that individual. Check it out at businessofstory.thinkific.com. It is a companion course to the ABTs of Selling, which hundreds of you have already taken, and you are the ones that asked for, hey man, can you do this for branding as well? Well, we've done it. It's there waiting for you, the ABTs of Branding, at businessofstory.thinkific.com. It's only $35, and I will tell you, I promise it will rock your brand story world. Until next week, when we will have another story artist like Dan White right here for you, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.
Great.